This is Software Project Rescue. My name is David Wally. Today I want to take a look at a quick inventory and peek at some source code. As always, this video is based on my opinions formed from 45 years of professional coding experience. By now you should have project files gathered in one place and you've shown that they're working. If not, loop back to the previous two videos. All of this should have taken somewhere between 30 minutes and whatever cap you put on the process, maybe a day or two, perhaps a week. We might be looking at possibly hiring a more experienced or specialist coder, and they might be recommending a rewrite. Many AI project rescues, for example, are people just doing a rewrite of what the AI product is doing. I want to take a little bit of a look at that in this episode, some for later episodes. But for this episode, we want to take an inventory, maybe a quick peek audit at some source files, and we can start with some early decisions. So the inventory is about gathering data about all of the project files that have been gathered together. Among that information, two questions are prominent. Who wrote this, and what were they thinking? If the first answer is AI, then we probably can't answer the second question. But AI project can mean many different things. So before you go any further, make sure you have straight exactly what AI has to do with this project, if anything at all. Was it written by AI? Does it use AI, such as using an online AI service and the project is repackaging something? Or is this advancing the science of AI? These are all very different projects and require very different experts to take a look at whether they make sense or not. So consider the pace of technological advancement and the pace of market changes, and consider your experience. Does it still make sense? Because we've already wasted a little bit of time, and you don't want to waste any more time or money. So I'm not saying that your project is a scam or anything like that. I'm simply saying now is a good time to look at those kinds of questions before you spend any more money on coders. If AI was used to write some of the project's code, then it's useful to find out, is it the entire project or was it certain components? If it's the entire project or components, you need to get a sense of how much effort has been expended so far. Because the question becomes, can a competitor recreate whatever it is that you have? So if this is an AI product and it took somebody a day to create, well, what is stopping a competitor from creating it in a day? Question is the value in the code or in the idea? If it's in the idea, working code is extremely helpful. but maybe isn't your final product. It's extremely helpful in a rewrite, which is what many AI project rescue services are doing. They're simply using the AI product as a model to do a rewrite, and they can do it very quickly because they know what they're aiming for. They skip a number of steps because they know the exact design, and they are going straight at the target, and so they can get there quickly. AI or not, what we're looking for is an inventory list of files and directories. And this happens to be something that AI can do, but personally, I want to know that a human has looked at every file or directory and verified that it passes a sanity check. I don't want a machine making a mistake at this point. I want a human to verify it. And I also want a human to verify that these are our files and that they're secure in a repo. And the AI can probably do the same task, but maybe not inspire the same confidence as just having somebody go through all of the files and directories and just get a sense of what's there and whether it does make sense. So starting with a directory tree listing, perhaps from a command line, you can perhaps put that into a spreadsheet in CSV format, for example. That might be helpful. And then you can start looking at some of the directories and collapsing them, considering them to be one entity. For example, if you're using Git as a version control system, there will be a .git directory, subdirectory. And I don't know what's in there, and I don't care. All I know is that Git uses that directory, and I don't have to mess with it. I shouldn't touch it. I just have to note in my listing this directory and everything underneath it is used for version control. And I'm done. I can move on. So some subdirectories treat them as a single file, and everything that I say about a file from here on, I'm talking about a file or a subdirectory. So what we want to know about each file is its format. Is it source code? Is it test code? Is it formal documentation? Is it informal notes or the history of the project? Is it media such as photos, audio, or video? Or perhaps some of the files you just don't know what they are, or it's suspected fluff, files that you don't need at all. Make note of them. Keep a list though. Anything identified as source code or test code, we'd like to know the purpose. However, the clock is ticking, so you can't drill down too deep as to what exactly every source code file does. But if you have a sense of the general area that this file relates to, you can make note of that in the list. In particular, if it's related to security in any way, then flag that, because any security work that's done in the project you have to take a very close look at it because it's so important and it's so easy to get it wrong. One of the questions that we need an answer to is who wrote each file. Now that may be an actual individual, their name, and a way to contact them perhaps if they're not on the team anymore. Or it might just be that we know it's a employee or contractor, and when we know that it was, then we know that we own that file. As opposed to something that's downloaded from the web or something that was purchased, we can't or shouldn't edit those files, because if there's an update to them in the future, then we're going to lose any changes that we made. So we can't safely change those files, and that's the key point about them being from somewhere else. It's not a bad thing, but they have to be treated differently. Are the files auto-generated? And if so, have they been edited after being auto-generated? That's a dangerous situation that could lead to bloat. So that's something to flag. First, that it's auto-generated, and then maybe we can figure out if it's been changed by hand. Same thing for AI-generated files. So basically we're trying to get down to who owns each file and whether they can be changed or not. If we own them, we should be able to change them. Our source code, or your source code, once those files have been identified, some statistics would be helpful. So there are tools that you can find on the internet to do this, or it's not too tough to write some bodge code to find out how many files are there, how many lines of code are there in total, how many of those lines are comments, or how many comments are there. And this can be helpful in just getting a sense of the size of what we're looking at in a rescue. Just how many lines of code are we looking at? That's going to be a very important thing to consider in any big decisions. A junior coder might be able to open a few code files for a quick peek audit. Can they make any sense of them? Now, the prettiness or the correctness isn't really the issue yet. We just want to get a sense. Can average coder make sense of what they're looking at, or does it look like a party frat house? If it's just a total mess and intermediate coder can't make any sense of it, that might be a red flag, because the cost has risen, the cost of continuing. The other thing that we'd like to know is something about the files that came from somewhere else that we didn't write. This is typical to assemble components written by others and create something very quickly, so you're getting accelerated progress. Examples of this might be using Node.js and NPM, and there's a whole ecosystem of files that you can download through NPM to create things quickly. WordPress has a similar ecosystem of plugins. There are free and paid plugins. You can add them to your website, or a developer can add them to a website and get a quick result. what can go wrong is called dependency hell. The problem is that if you use a component, you now depend on any updates that might be made to that component. There might be critical security updates that you have to use. You have to update your project. But that component might depend on other components that also depend on yet other components, and so on. And so there's just a whole bunch of dependencies that you've inherited by using something from a library of code that speeds you up. So there's a potential for constant updates, and that means a potential for constant breakage or potential security leaks. And staying on top of that can be very difficult. Hackers are taking advantage of this, and they're putting malicious code into pieces or plugins or code that can be downloaded from the net. It's a balancing act. There's accelerated progress, and we have to depend on other people's work anyway, and that's going to speed things up. But it's also a Wild West marketplace. You can't be sure, because there's so many thousands of coders that are creating these things. You can't be sure of what you've downloaded. So the question then becomes, do you care? And mostly, in my experience, many mainstream projects don't or can't care. They rely on on this code from other people, and there's no going back, and it's just not reasonable to do things any other way. But putting a twist on this, there's something called GPL hell, and that relies more, or that is about the question, do you own the code? Not so much about security, but copyright. Who owns the code that you're running? In particular, there are some open source licenses that require you to use an open source license as well. So you can freely download this code from the internet, and it's great, it speeds things up. But if you look at the licenses for all the dependencies that you have, you might find that you are breaking the terms of those licenses. In the case of AI code, I think it's still to be determined just what the legal problems are going to be. And so you have to ask the question with your lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I can't help you to answer this question. But the question is, do you care? And I'm not going to answer that question. I have no advice, except I would like to say that many mainstream projects do not seem to care. Some do. Many don't seem to care. I think the attitude right now is that there's just such a mess that nobody can really sort it out anyway. But I don't think a lawyer would see it exactly the same way. So you have to talk to somebody else. Anyway, there's some initial decisions that you can make. You can look at some fail-fast situations, like not being competitive, not having a competitive moat, because perhaps the project is entirely AI. Because the next step is probably to find and pay a better or more experienced or more specialized programmer. A junior programmer can get the README in shape so a more expensive coder won't be wasting time. In the next video, I want to look at getting an expert audit of a random-ish selection of source code files to get their opinion about what they see and how that might lead to some more critical decisions. If you've found any of this helpful, please like and subscribe, and leave a comment about any projects you've rescued or maybe you've abandoned. If you have any experience, I'd love to hear about yours. I'll talk to you next time.